So we're now starting book 10, and book 10 is a little bit more complicated than book 9. So if you remember in book 9, what happened was Odysseus and his men landed first on the land of the Lotus Eaters and then in the land of the Cyclops. Now we're going to experience Odysseus stopping at another couple of places. He continues his story, right? Remember, he is telling this story to the Phaeacians. So the men's next stop is going to be the Aeolian Island, the Island of the Winds. They're going to stay there for a month, and Aeolus, the king, is going to give Odysseus a parting gift, a sack of winds. Aeolus is then going to give them a west wind to kind of blow their ship nicely toward home. The men are going to sail for 9 days. They're going to catch sight of home. And then Odysseus will fall asleep after 9 days of being awake. And this is going to cause some problems. His crew will become suspicious that tied up leather bag that Aeolus gave Odysseus, they're going to become suspicious that the bag is full of a great treasure, and they will open it, which will blow all of the winds out, and the hurricane will actually take them back to Aeolus's island. So let's start book 10, The Bewitching Queen of Aea. We reached the Aeolian Island next, the home of Aeolus, Hippota's son, beloved by the gods who never die. A great floating island it was, and round it all huge ramparts rise of indestructible bronze, and sheer rock cliffs shoot up from sea to sky. The king had sired 12 children within his halls, 6 daughters and 6 sons in the lusty prime of youth. So he gave his daughters as wives to his 6 sons. Seated beside their dear father and doting mother, with delicacies aplenty spread before them, they feast on forever. All day long the halls breathe the savor of roasted meats, and echo round to the low moan of blowing pipes, and all night long, each one by his faithful mate, they sleep under soft piled rugs on corded bedsteads. So here we see a description of Aeolus and the Aeolian Islands. So Aeolus is Hippota's son, and he is beloved by the gods. In fact, he is the god of wind. And he has 12 children. Half of them are girls, half of them are boys, right? So it says he had sired 12 sons within his walls, 6 daughters and 6 sons. Sorry, it sired 12 children. We also get this description of him, that he is beloved by the gods, meaning that the gods really love him. They bestow gifts on him. They care for him. He's on a floating island, so it's not quite still. But around it are these sharp cliffs, these tall sort of mountainous structures made out of bronze. So they're made out of metal. They kind of keep everyone inside. His daughters and sons are married to each other, right? So he gave his daughters as wives to his 6 sons. They are married to each other. They sit with their father and their mother, and all day, every day, they eat. They eat roasted meats. They eat all sorts of delicacies. They feast on forever. That's all they do is eat. And around them, they hear blowing pipes. And at night, each son with his daughter, who is his wife, they sleep together under very soft, very luxurious rugs on bedsteads. This whole description tells us a couple things. One, Aeolus is pretty much a god, but follows the rules of hospitality, right? We'll see later that he lets Odysseus and his men stay there for a month. 2, they're on a floating island. This is one of those places where we can't really find it in history. It's surrounded by bronze walls, and we don't know why. We know a little bit about the king. The gods love him. He's got 12 kids, and his 12 kids all married each other, and all they do is eat and sleep in very comfortable beds. This is a very, very rich man, right? To this city of theirs we came, their splendid palace, and Aeolus hosted me one entire month. He pressed me for news of Troy and the Argive ships, and how we sailed for home. And I told him the whole story, first to last. So Odysseus shows up at this floating island and stays there for 1 month. And during that month, Aeolus is asking him all sorts of questions about the war that happened in Troy. This makes sense, despite the fact that it has been a while since the war at Troy, right? We've had the Cyclops incident, we've had them getting lost, so we have a lot happening before, but news travels slowly, meaning there is no internet. There's no real way to send information very quickly. And if Aeolus had friends who fought in the war, they might still be trying to get home. They might not have survived. Or they might not be able to write, so they can't send him a letter telling him about Troy. So Aeolus is very interested and asks Odysseus all about the war. What happened? Who was involved? How did things go down? Where was Achilles? All of these questions. For a month, right? 30 days. And then when I begged him to send me on my way, he denied me nothing. He went about my passage. He gave me a sack, the skin of a full-grown ox, binding inside the winds that howl from every quarter, for Zeus had made that king the master of all the winds, with powers to calm them down or rouse them as he pleased. This is the most important thing about Aeolus. Aeolus is god of wind. The one thing, so Odysseus has already annoyed and angered the god of the sea. There's no going back. He stabbed his son. So Poseidon is angry. But the two things that control a ship are the sea and wind. And if he can get the wind on his side, he can get home. So he asks Aeolus to send him home. And Aeolus gives them plenty of food and water, make sure that everything they need is there, and then also ties up every single wind, every breath of wind that he can find. He ties it into this bag, and that's going to become important later. When the winds are tied in a bag, it means that they cannot blow Odysseus' ship off course. It means that Odysseus will get home to Ithaca quite quickly, as long as the winds stay in the bag. Aeolus stowed the sack inside my holds, lashed so fast with a burnished silver cord, not even a slight puff could slip past that knot. So Aeolus knows about the winds, and he ties them up so tightly that nothing can get out. Yet, he set the west wind free to blow us on our way and waft our squadron home. But his plan was bound to fail, yes. Our own reckless folly swept us on to ruin. So Aeolus takes out the west wind, has it blow them towards home. It's a good plan. It's a good idea. But it's not going to work, Odysseus tells us. Odysseus foreshadows what will happen. He is using foreshadowing to be like, yeah, it was a good plan, but it's not going to work. This first section is important for us to read because it shows us even gods like Aeolus follow the laws of hospitality. They welcome the guests. They give parting gifts. So unlike the Cyclops, Odysseus has found here what he wanted. A place to stay with warm food, a bed to sleep in, and gifts to leave with. This is what he wanted from the Cyclops. That did not happen. 9 whole days we sailed, 9 nights non-stop. On the 10th, our own land hove into sight at last. We were so close, we could see men tending fires. So this is how close they get. They can see the people, right? They get close enough to see all of the people on the shore, the people making fires. They're about maybe half a day away, sailing-wise. But now an enticing sleep came upon me, bone-weary, from working the vessel sheet myself, no let-up, never trusting the ropes to any other mate, the faster to journey back to the native land. This is Odysseus's mistake. Had he let other people also steer the ship and control the sails, he would not have been so tired. But he does not trust his crew. And we don't know why he doesn't trust them. But he doesn't trust them, so Odysseus has stayed awake for 9 days and 9 nights. Now he has to fall asleep because he's exhausted. But the crew began to mutter among themselves, "Sure I was hauling troves of gold and silver home, the gifts of open-hearted Aeolus, Hippotas' son." The old story. One man glanced at another, grumbling. "Look at our captain's luck, so loved by the world, so prized at every landfall, every port of call." Odysseus fell asleep, and his crew starts to become suspicious, especially of that large tied-up bag that Odysseus had gotten from Aeolus. They're thinking, that's a big bag. It must have a great treasure in it, and it is being held from us. Look at our captain keeping everything away from us. There's also some irony happening here. Look at our captain's luck, so loved by the world, so prized at every landfall, every port of call. We know that Odysseus is not loved by the world and is, in fact, cursed by the gods. We know that he is not prized every time they put onto land, especially with the Cyclops, where people died. They say he's honored at every port of call where they put their ships. But again, this just isn't true. In fact, he's had to go into the Lotus Eater's lair to steal away his crew members. He's been yelled at. He's been ridiculed. He's had his men eaten. So this is ironic, right? All the men are remembering are the good things and not the bad things. Heaps of lovely plunder he hauls home from Troy, while we who went through slogging just as hard, we go home empty-handed. Now this Aeolus loads him down with treasure, favoritism, friend to friend. Hurry, let's see what loot is in the sack, how much gold and silver. Break it open, now. So we have here, they're upset because Odysseus won at Troy, and they think that he has all of this money to bring home, all of this treasure. Now they're like, Aeolus gave him this huge bag. Something is in it. This is some sort of favoritism. Come on, let's open it. Let's see what's going to happen. A fatal plan, but it won my shipmates over. They loosed the sack and all the winds burst out, and a sudden squall struck and swept us back to sea, wailing in tears far from our native land. And I woke up with a start, my spirit churning. Should I leap over the side and drown at once, or grin and bear it, stay among the living? I bore it all, held firm, hiding my face, clinging tight to the decks, while heavy squalls blasted our squadron back, again to Aeolus' island, shipmates groaning hard. So his crew got suspicious. They thought he had treasure, and when they opened it to see what was inside, they freed all the winds. And Odysseus wakes up and watches, in despair, as these winds blow them back to Aeolus' island. They've just sailed 10 days to be back right where they started. Part of this could have been avoided if Odysseus had just told them what was in the bag, or had he trusted someone else to control the sails, or if he had made sure they knew he was splitting up everything fairly. Remember back in chapter 9, or book 9, how focused he was on assuring everyone listening to his story that everything was being split evenly between everyone. So we know that, according to Odysseus, everything has been even until now. There's no reason for the men to open the bag. At this point, it's fate. The gods are playing with their minds. Something is happening. Fate punishes the crewmen for their dishonor, for their unjust suspicions of the captain, their inability to show any restraint. Again, we have their delayed homecoming because of their own actions this time. But again, we have the dangers of sleep and the dangers of forgetting. If you forget why you're going home, you no longer want to go home. If you forget that your captain has been sharing all of the loot with you evenly, then you tend to do something stupid. These themes of forgetfulness, of sleep, of pride, of danger, of causing harm to oneself more than anyone else, right? These themes are going to continue on throughout the book. And the book has several major themes, right? Fate, the gods, and free will is one of them. There are a lot of forces at play in the Odyssey. Fate, does it control death? Are they fated to have gone into the cavern of the Cyclops? Are they fated to have gone into the Cyclops' lair and stay in there until he came back? Or was it a decision? Are they fated to open the bag of the winds? Or was it free will? So fate, the gods, and free will, that's a major, major theme. Piety, customs, and justice is another one, right? They would not have stayed with the Cyclops if they didn't put so much faith in the customs and hospitality. Cunning, disguise, and self-restraint is another theme. Odysseus uses his cunning and disguises to get away from the Cyclops, and had his men used restraint here, they would have been home. Memory is another big one. They forgot here what their captain has done for them. At the land of the Lotus Eaters, they forgot why they were coming home. And so they stopped wanting to go. Later on in this book, they're going to have their memories wiped and realize that they're still people, but they don't act like people. They don't even look like people when memory is taken away. The last theme that really shows up a lot here is glory and honor, right? They leave their homeland, Ithaca, in search of glory and honor in the Battle of Troy. Odysseus blinds the Cyclops, but in order to get the glory and have the honor, he screams out his name back, so that the Cyclops can spread his fame and win him glory. But because Odysseus has named himself, the Cyclops brings on the misfortune. In the course of his whole journey, Odysseus is going to look for glory, but toward the end, he's going to start to regret his search for glory. And we won't read that far, but you would see it in his homecoming when he finally gets home and dresses as a beggar. So we have Odysseus's men here causing problems because they want the glory and the honor, causing problems because maybe they were fated to open up that bag, causing problems because they forgot how good their captain had been to them. We disembarked on the coast, drew water there, and crewmen snatched a meal by the swift ships. Once we'd had our fill of food and drink, I took a shipmate along with me, a herald too, and approached King Aeolus's famous halls, and here we found him feasting beside his wife and many children. Reaching the doorpost at the threshold, down we sat, but our hosts, amazed to see us, only shouted questions. Back again, Odysseus. Why? Some blustering god attacked you? Surely we launched you well. We sped you on your way to your own land and house, or any place you pleased. So disembark means to get off. So they landed back on the coast. They got some food, right? They snatched a meal. They got some food. They had some drink. Odysseus takes 2 people along with him to go back to Aeolus's halls. Of course he's eating, because that's what Aeolus does. And they sit down at the entrance. Now, if you don't know why they sat down at the entrance, it's because they weren't invited in yet. They're following the customs of hospitality. They are not yet invited in, so they cannot go in. This is different from, of course, Odysseus with the Cyclops, who just kind of walks in and just shows up. He waits very patiently, but instead of being invited in, he gets taunted by King Aeolus and his family. They ask, "Oh, did someone attack you? Surely we gave you enough, right? Didn't we give you wind? Didn't we give you everything you wanted to go wherever you wanted?" So they taunted, and I replied in deep despair, "A mutinous crew undid me. That and a cruel sleep. Set it to right, my friends. You have the power." Odysseus is begging Aeolus, "Hey, please, come on. You can do it again. You can tie up the winds. We can get back home. The reason I'm here is because my crew mutinied. They went against their captain. That and cruelly, I fell asleep." So he's asking, "Aeolus, please fix this." So I pleaded, gentle, humble appeals, but our host turned silent, hushed. And then the father broke forth with an ultimatum. "Away from my island fast, most cursed man alive. It is a crime to host a man or speed him on his way when the blessed, deathless gods despise him so. Crawling back like this, it proves the immortals hate you. Out! Get out! So Odysseus is like, hey, you can help me. You can do it again. You can fix things. But Aeolus tells him that he's cursed. Aeolus's response shows us how this chance is sort of combined with fate. Luck is combined with justice. When someone is unlucky, they are assumed to have offended the gods. They somehow wronged the gods. And so in this world, nothing is random. And while it seems to us like bad luck, in Odysseus's world, it seems like the gods are against him. And now, Aeolus does not need to follow the rules of hospitality. Now, Aeolus can say, no, you cannot come in here. You're cursed. The gods hate you. Now it is fate again. Now it is, this fate has driven him back to Aeolus's island, and fate has made it so Aeolus believes him cursed. And now Odysseus will find no help here. Grown as I did, his curses drove me from his halls, and from there we pulled away with heavy hearts, with the crew's spirits broken under the oars' labor, thanks to our own folly, no favoring wind in sight. Notice here that Odysseus also takes the blame. Thanks to our own folly, there is no favoring wind in sight. Not thanks to my crew's own folly, not thanks to my mutinous people, nothing like that. Odysseus takes the blame as well, saying, look, it's everyone's fault. Everyone caused problems. Everyone did something. And it's true. Odysseus should have let someone else sail, and the crew should not have opened the bag. So there's no wind to help them, so they need to row. 6 whole days we rowed, 6 nights nonstop. On the 7th day we raised the Laestrygonian land, Telepylus heights, where the craggy fort of Lamus rises. So Odysseus begs Aeolus for help, but Aeolus believes that Odysseus's misfortune proves that he's hated by the gods. Aeolus specifically makes sure there is no wind to help them at all, and so they have to row for 6 days and 6 nights. Finally, 7 days later, they find some land, and it's called the Laestrygonian land. They've never been here before. They don't know what's going to happen. So Odysseus is going to send some people to investigate. Where shepherd calls to shepherd as one drives in his flocks and the other drives his out, and he calls back an answer. Where a man who never sleeps could rake in double wages, one for herding cattle, one for pasturing fleecy sheep, the nightfall and sunrise march so close together. So we're getting a little description of the land. It's a shepherding land where a shepherd who never sleeps could herd cattle out one day and then could bring the sheep in at night and shear the sheep off of their wool. We entered a fine harbor there, all walled around by a great unbroken sweep of sky-scraping cliff and 2 steep headlands fronting each other close around the mouth, so the passage in is cramped. Pay attention to the setting here and how it affects the story. They are surrounded by tall cliffs, by things that people can stand up on and look down upon them with. This is going to become an issue. Here the rest of my rolling squadron steered right into the gaping cove and moored tightly prow by prow. Never a swell there big or small, a milk-white calm spreads all around the place. So of course his men want to put their boats there. There is no tide. There is nothing that's making the water move at all. There's no current. There's no waves. It's the best place to put your ship." So all of the men put it there, except Odysseus. "But I alone anchored my black ship outside, well clear of the harbor's jaws. I tied her fast to a cliffside with a cable. I scaled its rock face to look out on its crest, but glimpsed no trace of work of man or beast from there. All I spied was a plume of smoke drifting off the land." So Odysseus anchors his ship far away from the other men. He ties it to a cliff and climbs up to the top, and all he sees is some smoke. "So I sent some crew ahead to learn who lived there. Men like us, perhaps, who live on bread. 2 good mates I chose, and a third to run the news. They disembarked and set out on a beaten trail, the wagons used for hauling timber down to town from the mountain heights above. And before the walls they met a girl drawing water, Antiphates' strapping daughter, king of the Laestrygonians. Odysseus again has sent some of his crew to figure out what's happening. This did not work out well for him in the land of the Lotus Eaters, and it will not work out well for him here. He wants to know who lives here. And they meet the princess of the Laestrygonians. They meet Antiphates' daughter. Antiphates is king of the Laestrygonians, and his daughter then is princess. She'd come down to the clear running spring Artacacia, where the local people came to fill their pails, right? So she just came down for some water. My shipmates clustered round her, asking questions. Who was king of the realm? Who ruled the natives here? Odysseus sent them out to find information, so of course they're going to ask questions. She waved at once to her father's high-roofed halls. They entered the sumptuous palace, found his wife inside, a woman as huge as a mountain crag, who filled them all with horror. So they found a giant. Clearly the daughter is a normal-sized person, but the woman, her mother, the wife of the king, is so big, so tall, that they are terrified. Straight away she summoned royal Antiphates from assembly, her husband, who prepared my crew a barbarous welcome. Snatching one of my men, he tore him up for dinner. The other 2 sprang free and reached the ships. But the king let loose a howling through the town that brought the tremendous Laestrygonians swarming up from every side. Hundreds, not like men, like giants. Down from the cliffs they flung great rocks a man could hardly hoist, and ghastly shattering din rose up from all the ships, men in their death cries, hulls smashed to splinters. Once again, we have the custom of hospitality, and once again, it is a problem, right? So Aeolus, the king of the winds, was very nice. But now we've got Antiphates, king of the Laestrygonians, who are eating Odysseus's men, and are all of a sudden the second cannibalistic culture Odysseus has found. They're destroying the ships. They're throwing giant rocks to splinter the ships into toothpicks. They speared the crews like fish and whisked them home to make their grisly meal. But while they killed off in the harbor depths, I pulled the sword from beside my hip and hacked away at the ropes that moored my blue-proud ship of war, and shouted rapid orders at my shipmates. Put your backs in the oars, now row or die. In terror they ripped the swells all as one, and what a joy as we darted out toward open sea, clear of those beetling cliffs, my ship alone, but the rest went down en masse. Our squadron sank. So the Laestrygonians are taking spears and stabbing them through all of the men that they can, like fish, and they're taking them away to eat. Odysseus kind of just abandons the rest of the crew. There's not much he can do. And he cuts his ship free and makes his men row, and they are the only ship to survive. Only one ship survives the Laestrygonians. So, although we may assume that Odysseus just has bad luck, it does seem kind of like someone's in control. It seems that in this world, someone is controlling Odysseus because it is so improbable that Odysseus would encounter two cannibalistic cultures in a row. It seems so improbable that he would go from one giant, the Cyclops, to another giant, the Laestrygonians, very quickly. It seems so improbable that he would have men eaten by the Cyclops in the last book and have the rest of his crews eaten by the Laestrygonians in this book. So it seems like the gods are playing a role here and are controlling things because it just wouldn't work out otherwise. So I'm going to split this into another video for you guys. So they have just escaped the Laestrygonians, and then we'll start from there in the next video, so that way you don't have another 2-hour video.